Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. Today is the second rest day of the 2023 Tour de France, and the cycling gods have gifted us the first 2 weeks of the Tour de France. Something legendary here. Jonas Vingegaard and Tadej Pogacar, hats off to both of you guys. And you guys have put on a show on multiple mountain climbing stages here at this year's Tour de France, starting at stage 1, stage 2, Jaskibel, that was marvelous. It has been a show throughout every climbing stage here at the Tour de France, and I have yet to be bored while sitting on the Chesterfield. Now, we start looking at tomorrow's individual time trial. We got a 10-second deficit between Jonas Vingegaard in first and Tadej Pogacar, the Slovenian, the two-time Tour de France winner, trying to dethrone Jonas Vingegaard, who's wearing the race leader's yellow jersey, on tomorrow's individual time trial. Now, 22 kilometers long, there's 2 climbs throughout the course. The first one comes at 2 kilometers, and it's about 1.3K long, and we're looking at about 8.5% is what I saw on the profile. Now, after that, you're going to drop down 8 kilometers flat along the coast, along the river there. And then, of course, that's going to go to 16 kilometers, and they're going to climb up to the finish of the 22-kilometer course here, that last 16 all the way to the finish. But it's really about 2.5 kilometers at 9.5%. That's going to be the question mark that probably decides who's going to win or lose tomorrow's individual time trial and who could win or lose this year's Tour de France. But I got question marks about that, and I'll talk about that too later. Now, when we're looking at the individual time trial, you have to see 3 favorites that can win tomorrow's stage: Tadej Pogacar, Jonas Vingegaard, and of course the big man Wout van Aert himself. So Jumbo-Visma have 2 cards to play on tomorrow's stage 16 of the Tour de France. And let me remind you guys, Wout van Aert's only been second 2 times throughout this Tour de France and has yet to get himself that stage victory. We saw a little bit of chaos between the team with Jonas Vingegaard and Wout van Aert. Jonas not wanting to do that lead out for that last 1K when Victor Lafay won stage 2, and Wout van Aert lost the opportunity that what I saw as being the easiest stage victory that he could have taken. Yesterday in stage 15, with sending Wout van Aert up the road for Jumbo-Visma, I think he could have easily had won yesterday's stage 15, but he was riding on the front and spending too much energy throughout the whole stage yesterday. You could see at the beginning of the stage, as soon as the flag dropped, Wout van Aert's pulling like crazy, and he's got the whole peloton on his wheel, which just doesn't make much sense. Later, you see him in that big breakaway that escaped after the crash with 130 kilometers to go, and you see Wout van Aert pulling on the front all the time when you had 4 EF Education riders in there and you had 3 Trek Segafredo riders that both teams want to battle for the KOM points. So Wout van Aert, with the race leader's yellow jersey of Jonas Vingegaard, easily had the card to pull out of his back pocket and say, hey, I got the race leader's yellow jersey. I don't have to do any work here. But instead, we saw Wout van Aert pulling on a lot of those climbs going all the way up to the top of the KOM. And I think we're going to see Wout van Aert possibly get interested in the KOM polka dot jersey in these final mountain stages after tomorrow's individual time trial is quite a possibility, depending on how tomorrow's individual time trial plays out. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the tactics after tomorrow's individual time trial, and I'll give you a scenario that Tadej Pogacar is in the race leader's yellow jersey after tomorrow's stage 16, and Jonas Vingegaard is in the race leader's jersey after tomorrow's 16. I'll give you both scenarios. Now, if we see Jumbo-Visma wearing the race leader's yellow jersey after the individual time trial, Tadej Pogacar has to make up some time. I told you guys before the race even started here at the Tour de France that I believed that this year's Tour de France was going to be decided on time bonifications, and I thought Jumbo-Visma specifically had to bring Primoz Roglic into this year's edition so that he could steal time bonuses away from Tadej Pogacar, but Jumbo-Visma wanted to send him to the Giro. Okay, he won the Giro, and he's going to go to the Tour of Spain and possibly win the Tour of Spain, but what about here at the Tour de France? Well, Jonas Vingegaard's given up a lot of time bonuses to the Slovenian, and now let's go into 2 days from now on stage 17, the next mountain stage, and let's pretend that Jonas Vingegaard still has the race leader's jersey. Now remember, he doesn't have to win tomorrow's individual time trial to keep the jersey because he has a 10-second gap. So Tadej Pogacar, if he's to win the individual time trial, he has to take back more than 11 seconds on Jonas Vingegaard to put himself into the race leader's yellow jersey. We get on stage 17. Let's pretend Jonas has got a 10-second gap still on Tadej Pogacar or somewhere thereabouts. When we talk in UAE Team Emirates, so far throughout the first 2 weeks here at the Tour de France, Tadej Pogačar has really not been able to drop Jonas Vingegaard with the exception of a few little gaps and, of course, that finishing attack that he had on Côte-Ray-Cambasque. There he put 25 seconds on him, but that's not a whole lot of time when Jonas Vingegaard was pulling before Tadej Pogačar's attack, which was the one tactical mistake that I think Jonas Vingegaard's made here in this year's 23 Tour de France. So he's not going to make that tactical mistake again to Tadej Pogačar with getting on the front with the Slovenian sitting second wheel. So we can assume that going into stage 17, UAE team members Tadej Pogačar, if we look at the first 2 weeks, let's say he can't drop Jonas Vingegaard going up those climbs. I think the wisest tactic for UAE team members would be to control the peloton, start the final climb on stage 17 and possibly stage 20 if he still doesn't have the race leader's jersey. Control the peloton up that climb and don't even make it hard. Don't make it fast. Keep it slow. Don't attack. Keep as many guys together in the front group as Tadej Pogačar possibly can and the pace as slow as possible, because there's something sneaky about stage 17 and stage 20. Both those stages do not summit to finish those Tour de France stages. They'll go over the summit and drop down with about 6 kilometers to go on both of those stages. So Tadej Pogačar, if he needs time bonuses, the best thing he can possibly do is have as many guys together going over the top of those climbs and hopefully a couple teammates that control the pace going down into the descent that'll finish off those stages so that he can win the sprint finish and take the time bonuses over Jonas Vingegaard if we're talking about 1 to 10 seconds. If it's something bigger, if we're talking 15, 20-second gap that Tadej Pogačar needs, he's going to have to throw everything into his legs and drop Jonas Vingegaard going up those climbs because the time bonuses won't be enough. But if the gap is really narrow, which I think they will be, Tadej Pogačar is tactically going to have to race stage 17 and 20, the only 2 mountain stages left at this year's Tour de France. He's going to have to race them smart, and he might have to rely on time bonifications, which means he needs the group to be as big as it possibly can, and then Tadej Pogačar is going to have to win the sprint and hope somebody else other than Jonas Vingegaard gets second and third at the finish of those stages so that he can get the maximum 10-second bonus over Jonas Vingegaard. Because in my mind, when I've watched the first 2 weeks here at the Tour de France, Tadej Pogačar has not legitimately been able to drop Jonas Vingegaard on any of the mountain stages, and especially when we look at the Cambasque stage, that stage, Jonas Vingegaard had done a lot of pulling, over 10 kilometers on the front, in order for Tadej Pogačar to be able to drop him and only gain 25 seconds. And we saw in yesterday's stage 15, Jonas Vingegaard did not fall for it when Tadej Pogačar backed off the gas, let Adam Yates go up the road. Jonas Vingegaard still knew, I got a 10-second buffer on you, Tadej Pogačar. I do not have to close this gap, and I do not care about Adam Yates. So that tactic will not work if they try it again, which we already know on 15 it didn't work, and it won't work later in this year's edition. So Tadej Pogačar, the best thing to do when we're talking about 17 and 20, you have to go up that final climb, keep it fast enough where no one can take away the time bonuses, but keep it slow enough to when you get to the top, you got a bunch of guys with you that can get in the way of Jonas Vingegaard at the sprint finish on stages 17 and 20 of this year's Tour de France. Now, let's say Tadej Pogačar has the race leader's yellow jersey after tomorrow's stage 16 of the individual time trial. Well, Tadej Pogačar and UAE team members, they just have to sit back, let breakaways go up the road as much as they want or as big as they want, control the peloton and just make sure that the gap to the breakaways is far out there as it possibly be, so no time bonuses are available for Jonas Vingegaard, and that will take away any chance there. Then Tadej Pogačar, of course, has to follow Jonas Vingegaard, Jumbo-Visma, going up the final climbs on stage 17 and stage 20. But so far, if we go backwards the last 2 weeks here at the Tour de France, neither rider, like I've already said, has been able to drop the other. So I wouldn't expect that Jonas Vingegaard can drop Tadej Pogačar or vice versa when we're talking about stage 17 and 20, unless one of them are a complete knucklehead and go to the front and start pulling hard again for 10 kilometers like we saw on Tourmalet and then, of course, on Cambasque. That stage was a major mistake that Jumbo-Visma had made, and really the only mistake that Jonas Vingegaard I've seen has made here at this year's 23 edition of the Tour de France. Tadej Pogačar has made a few small mistakes throughout the course, but it has cost him big time because when we look at the time bonuses going up Jouplan, that mistake that the motorcycles being in front of him, you can't blame Tadej Pogačar for that. But afterwards, it looked like he got caught napping just a little bit, or possibly his legs were tired from trying to do that attack that the motorcycles disrupted. And those 3-second time bonuses could be what decide this year's 2023 Tour de France, because tomorrow's individual time trial, I expect it to be very close. And you can flip the coin for Tadej Pogačar to win, Jonas Vingegaard to win it, or possibly even Wout van Aert. But I think when it's all said and done, Jonas Vingegaard is still in the race leader's yellow jersey at the end of tomorrow's race because he has a 10-second advantage on Tadej Pogačar. One interesting thing about tomorrow's individual time trial that I'm looking forward to is trying to figure out whether or not if the riders will switch from their TT bikes to their road bikes at the final part of the climb, because at 2.5 kilometers, 9.5%, that's pretty steep, but I don't think it's quite steep enough that the riders will switch from their TT bike to the road bike to finish out tomorrow's stage 16 of the individual time trial, just because when you look at the speed of Tadej Pogačar and Jonas Vingegaard going up a 10% climb, those guys are going so fast that there's not a spot really where you can switch the bike without losing a lot of time. If it's super technical or super narrow and there's some spot where all of the speed gets scrubbed from the riders, I could see that maybe they would do a bike change up it. But in general, when I'm looking at 9.5% for only 2.5K, and then they still a slight drag after that, so I think the riders will stay on their TT bike to finish out tomorrow's stage 16 individual time trial. One other thing to think about, Tadej Pogačar has beaten Jonas Vingegaard 6 times to his 3 of Jonas Vingegaard's, so Tadej Pogačar should look like the favorite. But of course, if you go back to last year's Tour de France, Jonas Vingegaard won that final TT, but I could take you back another stage before that final TT where Tadej Pogačar crashed, so that can explain that. We could go back to the 2021 Tour de France, the final TT, where Jonas Vingegaard again beat Tadej Pogačar, but I could show you Tadej Pogačar with a 5-minute lead over Jonas Vingegaard going into that TT, so there's no reason for the Slovenian to have gone full gas on that stage, and that would explain at least 2 of those losses that Tadej Pogačar has. But even if I move those losses over to Tadej Pogačar and say he has 8 better results than Jonas Vingegaard has to only 1 of Tadej Pogačar, I still say it's even. Jonas Vingegaard has gotten better year to year, and now this year's 2023 edition of the Tour de France, Jonas Vingegaard has looked spectacular on level form here with Tadej Pogačar, only having the edge when we're talking about pure speed. But Jonas Vingegaard has raced tactically incredibly intelligent, so tomorrow's individual time trial is going to be a big one to watch from the Chesterfield. And we'll have to see if Wout van Aert, who's only gotten 2 times second places here at this year's Tour de France, if he can get that final stage victory here on tomorrow's stage 16 too, because you know Wout van Aert is itching big time. And when we start looking at the final stages, I got to believe stage 17 is going to come down to a small group. If UAE team members don't have the race leader's jersey, if Jonas Vingegaard do have the race leader's jersey, and UAE team members are too far back, then of course the break could go the distance. But in general, I think the next 2 mountain stages should be between the general classification favorites of Jonas Vingegaard and Tadej Pogačar fighting for it, which means Wout van Aert won't have an opportunity to win one of those stages. And then when we look at the last 3 possible sprint stages here at this year's Tour de France, talking about 18, 19, and 21, of course, those are possible stages that Wout van Aert will have to look for if he doesn't win tomorrow's individual time trial. So Jonas Vingegaard and Jumbo-Visma might have to help Jasper Philipsen, who has 4 wins here at this year's Tour de France, and they might have to help Alpecin de Koenig control the peloton when we're talking 18 and 19 to help Wout van Aert get a shot at winning that stage victory. And of course, on the Champs, that's not asking for much if Jumbo-Visma and Alpecin de Koenig want to make it a field sprint on that stage. But Jasper Philipsen, with 4 victories, has a chance at getting 3 more victories here at the Tour de France stages, on stages 18 and 19, and of course on the Champs, and that would be almost up there with Eddie Merckx's record, who has 8 victories in a Tour de France. So at the moment, the Belgium Eddie Merckx still holds the record and will continue to hold it at the end of this year's edition, I'm sure, because I don't see Jasper Philipsen winning 8 victories here with 2 mountain stages that are going to interrupt any possibilities there. Now, when we look at the final stage on the Champs-Élysées, which team will be in the race leader's jersey? I can't tell you. They have put on a fantastic show. Thank you, Jonas Vinigo. Thank you, Tadej Pogacar, for highlighting this first 2 weeks of the Tour de France. And may the best rider win tomorrow's individual time trial on stage 16. And let's keep it close because we want a big-time battle going into the final 2 mountain stages here at the Tour de France. And I'm sure we'll have it. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you after tomorrow's individual time trial finishes. See you on the next edition real soon.